What is setting boundaries in a relationship? If you have a problem setting boundaries in relationships, you probably feel that you aren't living your true self. Some people may manipulate you. In that case, it seems hard for you to stand, making you feel incompetent. Watching this drama hurts your feelings and converts those emotions into self-judgment. If this sounds familiar, you are not alone. This is a very common situation many people experience. I have a video series completely related to this very important topic, setting boundaries. The first video in this series is related to the definition of setting boundaries. Other videos will cover why this topic is important and the difficulties and solutions for setting boundaries. I know that there are many contents out there concentrating on setting boundaries. But if the definition of setting boundaries is still confusing for you, then you will face difficulties immediately. Boundary issues can be seen at many times in life. The simplest examples are the borders between countries. It is a historical problem source deciding where the borders of countries ends between them. Due to this conflict of interest, these problems is very difficult to solve. As of now, wars are happening in some parts of the world, and unfortunately there will be more. Conflicting needs are very common in every type of relationship, and that is the source of boundary problems. So, if I define setting boundaries, it simply means being yourself despite the differences and conflicting needs. When you have answers to all of these 5 questions, you can set healthy boundaries. Who am I? What do I want? Who they are? What they want? What can be done about this? If you fail to answer all of these questions, there are boundary issues. For example, think of an adolescent who experiences a dependence-independence conflict with their parents. These conflicts are boundary issues resulting in both sides not understanding each other and having difficulty finding a mutual ground. Spouses can have arguments like that related to boundary issues. For example, when one partner usually suppresses their needs to please the other, they can realize this is wrong because they feel that they are not living their true self. Unfortunately, this realization without answering the 5 questions can heighten the arguments and worsen the relationship. Boundary issues can be seen as a battle of egos in the corporate world. People with selfish and narcissistic traits only pay attention to their needs and ignore others. As a result, they can enter other people's boundaries. As you see, there are 2 sides of a boundary. It is very important to know yourself, be aware of your needs, and own yourself at your side of the boundaries. If you have a civil war in your inner world, it will be very difficult to fight with the outside world, and you risk of losing your integrity. I explained this thing in another video titled something like Owning Yourself. Setting boundaries is not just standing behind your needs. Setting boundaries requires understanding others' needs. In that way, you will have an advantage in the boundary negotiation phase. This is especially important in close relationships, which is also the source of difficulty. You should be yourself without becoming alienated while letting other people be themselves. It is like becoming we by staying me. I know it is not easy. As a psychotherapist, I can say that most of my clients have issues related to this task. I hope it is more clear what the setting boundary means. if I also explain what doesn't setting boundary means, then it will be much more clear. Setting boundaries is not something like putting a wall between or be offended by others. If there is a conflict and you put a wall between or act passive-aggressively, you're not setting a boundary. You're just trying to cope with your unpleasant feelings dysfunctionally. Boundaries should also have openness. But of course, there are some people you just have to stay away from. This is another thing to consider. Let's continue what setting boundaries doesn't mean. Setting boundaries is not selfishness or being a bad person. When you use the term selfish, it is usually perceived as a bad trait, but it is actually natural. Another viewpoint says all living creatures are selfish because they all want their needs to be fulfilled. When I use the term selfishness, I don't mean not paying attention to other people's needs. As you answer the 5 questions I told you, you'll be a good selfish person. Who am I? Who do I need? Who are they? What they want? And what can be done about this? So it is possible to be both a selfish and a good person when you set boundaries effectively. It is a common misconception that setting boundaries will put you in a lonely place where you only have to feel fine being with yourself. You won't need anybody in an isolated manner. This is actually wrong. Setting boundaries is directly related to a trait between you and others. So when you set a boundary, you already accept that you need others. Setting boundaries will make this trait in peace. As we see in avoidant attachment style, isolation is a kind of dysfunctional coping behavior. This is a kind of escape. Isolation and avoidance are the results of an unsuccessful boundary setting attempts. I don't say that it is easy to do what I suggest. You should try to keep answering the 5 questions that make it easier to set boundaries. And of course, you have to implement what you decide. I'll shoot another video that explains the difficulties of setting boundaries, why it is important, and the effective ways to do so. I want to talk about many topics in my channel, but my time is limited. So I want to prioritize what you need to hear. If you write what topics you need to hear first, I can plan videos accordingly. This is a kind of setting boundaries between us. You'll tell me what you need, I hear you, and we try to meet in a midway. Even though I can't answer individual questions in the comments, I try to read all of them. So please feel free to share your thoughts. Take care. I really mean it. Trying to learn setting boundaries is a great start to do so. Keep going. See you at the next video.